Did you know that there's 15 different types of plum trees native to North America? Here at Heppy, we grow 5 different types. In this video, I'm going to do a taste test comparison between the Mexican plum and the Chickasaw plum. I'll briefly describe what I've learned about our 5 different types of plum trees after growing them for 6 years. I'll describe which plum tree is my favorite and why it's my favorite. And finally, I'll also show you a size comparison between these girls and some store-bought plums. Welcome to Heppy. We're gonna take it up a notch. Be a slightly different wall. I'm curious to know if let me get right down here. You can see that ladybug larvae. Bam! Pull the thing down like a monkey. These are about 3/4 inches wide, and here's a Chickasaw. That's a Mexican plum. Wow. Wow. And that's the Chickasaw. Remarkably, the Mexican plum has a flavor that's very, very close to a store-bought plum. I think one slight difference is a very, very slight tartness coming from the skin, but otherwise the fruit flesh, I'm talking about the Mexican plum, is just absolutely superb. The Chickasaw plum is just like the American plum and the Creek plum. You have to pick the fruit when it's dark, dark red, not bright red like I just did. And the Mexican plum has a sheen on it that makes it look just like a store-bought plum, except a lot smaller. So hands down, the Mexican plum produces the best tasting fruit, by far the best tasting fruit out of the 5 different type of native plums that we grow. There's another reason I put the Mexican plum #1, and that is just how the tree itself grows. It grows wonderfully as a single stemmed or single trunked fruit tree. Of course, there's some branching right there at the saddle, but down low, it's just nice erect tree. And the branches are very easy to trim and have grow out laterally. It's a very trimmable and trainable tree. So I have my fruit right over my noggin. It takes a little effort, extra effort in its younger years to get that sort of lateral branch movement, but the Mexican plum takes to pruning very, very well. And by the way, it's also the squirrel's favorite fruit. The fruit disappeared off of this tree like no time flat. So let's take a look at the 5 different types of native plum trees I grow. I'll quickly describe what I've learned about them over the last 6 years. This is the American plum. It grows more like a tree bush. I had to work really hard to get it look like this, to look like a normal tree. It has a very open, airy canopy. It grows native in 43 US states and in Canada. So that'll tell you it'll tolerate many types of sunlight and soil conditions. The American plum is a heavy blooming, heavy fruiting tree. It takes at least 5 years from a young tree, 5 years before it's going to start bearing fruit. I get more and more fruit each year. It fruits at the same time as a creek plum. Like the beach plum, this is another tree that can be purchased through state nurseries. Bare root, maybe about 24 inches tall at most, and very, very inexpensive. Then there's the creek plum. It actually wants to grow more like a shrub than a tree. I've trained it to grow upright because eventually I like to remove the fencing around it, but it needs to be tall enough to get out of the reach of deer. It fruits simultaneous to the American plum. By nature, it is more of a shrub than a tree. So if you're going to make a hedge, this is a good option. It does not grow as fast as the American plum. The American plum grows really fast. This year, the Chickasaw just went absolutely crazy. Planted in 2001, it just fruited like nuts. The fruit you're looking at is like 1/8 of what was on this tree. The squirrels have just absolutely had their way with this tree, and I think a groundhog has done its magic too. That branch right there might have had 100 fruit on it alone. You can see how the branch completely bent over. It's going to be interesting to see if this Chickasaw fruits next year like it did this year. This is either a mega stud Chickasaw plum tree or a mega stud fruiter, or she's going to take some time off next year, won't produce quite enough fruit. So we'll keep an eye on that. Behind me is a collection of beach plums, and I'm really embarrassed to say that they're still in pots. That is so not good. But this year they flowered for the first time, and they flowered really well. So I was barely smart enough to mark, I think about 3 of them flowered. Of all 15 native plum trees, it's my understanding that the beach plum, and only the beach plum, needs a male and a female. All other native plums are self-fertile, self-fruiting, self-pollinating. So I can't give genuine feedback on fruit flavor. What I can say, a big standout of this native plum tree, is that it is inherently a dwarf tree with a maximum height of around 6 feet. Its story is fascinating, by the way. Its native range is sand dunes in around New Jersey. Yeah, sand dunes, a native plum tree adapted to sand dunes. But they'll do just fine in organic, high organic soil. They're obviously going to want full sun if they're hanging out along the beach. These girls cost us next to nothing. We bought them from a state nursery. Check out our list of state nurseries at this link. But if I were to do it again, or advise you to buy a native plum tree, of the 5 that I grow, I wholeheartedly put everything I got behind the Mexican plum. Fruit flavor, if nothing else, grows like a standard tree, a standard fruit tree, but of course the fruit's gonna be a little smaller. So how much smaller is these native plums compared to store-bought plums? We'll find out. Well, the sun is going lower in the horizon, but just size-wise, you can see that there's a distinct difference between the red plum, black plum, green plum, Chickasaw, and the Mexican plum. Don't forget that the Mexican plum tree got no water this year, and it was nuclear hot. But you won't get these fruit to be that much bigger, maybe 1 inch round. What I am kind of interested in seeing is, do I have tart skin? No. Wow. I mean, fruit-wise, so without question, you can see that the store-bought plum, like I need to show you which one it is a little bigger than the native plum. Skin's not tart. This is a green plum. I think that's the one European. I'm guessing this is Japanese, and a European plum tree makes what's known as a green one. There's a specific variety. I don't know if that's this variety here. Wow. The red is the best of these 3 store-bought plum, but that's not the analysis I'm doing. The reason the Mexican plum is better than all of them is because it ain't got the stupid label on it. These come from my property, and they're definitely organic. Final note about native plums, some are under threat. They grow in super niche, small regions of America, not necessarily like the American plum, which grows native in 46 states. Some is a very, very small area. In those areas, they're losing the mammals that eat the fruit and deposit the seeds along the way, and that's how this plant would spread. They're losing habitat. They're losing pollinators. So consider growing, I don't care which of the 15, consider growing a native plum tree and introducing that into your environment. Just grow for the hell of it. The beach plum stays down to 6 feet tall. The Mexican plum is going to get you a decent fruit. I'm thinking about how tasty these fruits are and watering up just talking about them. Think about integrating native fruiting trees into the environment. They belong in our environment. Encourage their growth. Give them a bump. I hope you learned a thing or two about native plum trees. Please consider integrating them into your environment. Take care of yourself. Take care of someone else if you can. Love you. Bye.